Headline, Utah demands Fed surrender lands by December 31st. That's New American Magazine. That came and passed. So exciting, sir. Give us a presentation on what's happening.
Well, thanks, Alex. It is a big time. It's a wonderful time to be alive, as Ronald Reagan said. I was just down in Austin last week doing a training for new legislators in Texas. This is an issue that transcends the West because beyond Colorado, states in the East are spending billions of dollars a year to pay the federal government to manage the forest in a way that burns 6 million acres a year, kills millions of animals, destroys that resource, pollutes the air, destroys the watershed for generations. You all east of Colorado and across the nation spending billions of dollars a year to lock up what the Government Accountability Office said is more recoverable oil in Utah, Colorado, Wyoming than the rest of the world combined. Now, another important thing, we were invited to come and give a presentation to the Reagan Library a couple months ago on national security. Our national security cannot operate. Our electronics technology, renewable energy technology cannot operate without rare earth minerals. And right now, 95% of the rare earth minerals for those industries to function come from China. The price is going exponential, and we've got rare earth minerals locked up all over the Western lands under federal control. Now, here's the critical thing, Alex. Here's how simple this is. You get right back to the fundamental principles, right? Governments exist to secure these rights: life, liberty, property, and self-government. That's why government exists. Well, without the right and control of property, we don't have liberty. And so here's the situation. You've got the federal government controls more than 50% of the land west of Kansas, but the statehood promises, called enabling acts, the statehood promises are the same. In many cases, they're word for word the same. In some cases, Montana and North Dakota, for example, it's the same document. And yet, on one hand, the federal government transfers the land, and on the other, they don't. Now, promises are the same. What most people don't realize is at one point, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and of course, Alex, you know that great western state way over there of Florida? They were as much as 90% federally controlled for decades. And they were sending resolutions to Congress saying, hey, we can't educate our kids. We can't grow our economy. Our people are leaving our state because you're controlling all our land. They banded together. They compelled Congress to transfer their land, honor their statehood agreement. And we're simply doing the same thing today. We expect Congress to honor the very same statehood terms that they kept with all states east of Colorado, because it is the only solution big enough to get to better access, better health, better productivity. And so what people can do, they go to that American Lands Council website, AmericanLandsCouncil.org. Number one, you can sign the petition and get in the game. Log in at the website, get in the game. We're leading the nation in restoring the rights of property, liberty, and self-governance, which restores our balance, as you were talking about. The other thing you do is simply tell someone. Tell somebody else about this. Show them that map. Get them in the game. And critically, tell your leaders. Don't assume they know. Don't assume they understand. Tell them, and tell them persistently. And as Thomas Hart Benton, he was the Democratic senator from Missouri who rallied all those western states in the 1850s. He said, you got to get your members of Congress to fix their eyes steadily upon the period of the speedy distinction of the federal title to all the lands within their boundaries. And they did it, Alex. Illinois is not 96% federally controlled. Missouri's not 90% federally controlled. Louisiana's not 90% federally controlled. And they have the exact same statehood terms that these western states do today. So that's, in a nutshell, that's where we're at. Happy to go wherever you'd like and answering questions. This is a big subject. There's a lot of information on that website, AmericanLandsCouncil.org. You can get to the Facebook page as well. We push information out every day. But this is the single solution big enough to restore balance in our nation and get us back to liberty, property, self-governance, where we have better access, better health, better productivity on our lands.
Absolutely. Ken Ivory, he is the president and head and founder of AmericanLandsCouncil.org. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason products cost so much, the reason that our economy is stalling is we're not being given access to the rare earth minerals, to coal, you name it. But China is. They're in Australia, they're in Africa, they're in Latin America. They're exploring. And American companies aren't doing it because the regulations, and the feds are trying to get more land out west. I mean, take the Bundy Ranch situation. There were 34 families. Now there's one. We can't even produce beef in America because of regulations. More and more farmers are giving up because special interests, from my research, want prohibitive costs there that they're able to be exempt from so that they don't have any competition. And if we're able to free up, what are some of the numbers? I know they're on the Land Council website. I mean, am I exaggerating to say that if we start freeing up even 10, 20, 30% of Western land and some of the federal land in the East, that this would just make the 10% growth rates that we had until the 1920s look small?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. You can see this map right here over my shoulder. The Institute for Energy Research early last year said there's more than $150 trillion in mineral value locked up in the federally controlled lands. At the same time, under failed federal policies that tie the hands of these good workers on the ground that would like to care for the land, we're burning 6 million acres of forest, Alex, 6 million acres a year. That's polluting the air. It's destroying the watershed. It's killing millions of animals. Instead of sequestering that carbon into homes and viable products where that wood then stores that carbon for an indefinite period. But the federal policies that are supposedly environmental policies, destroying the air, destroying the water, destroying the animals, destroying the habitat for generations. No, we've got all the tools. We've got all the tools. We simply have to get back to the very simple constitutional remedy of liberty, right, and control of property and self-governance. Let me tell you a story, Alex, what's happening right now. Canada, our neighbor to the north, over the last decade, Canada has been transferring land, water, and resources to the provinces. And then just last year, they completed the transfer of land, water, and resources to the Northwest Territories. And here's what they said they discovered. They said, we discovered that when we let people closest to the matter, closest to the land, water, and resources make the decisions, we learned that you get a better decision.
That's not rocket science. That's not rocket science.
Yeah, that's not rocket science. And so in the land of liberty, we're going the other way. We've got a federal government that's centralizing control over more and more aspects of every aspect of our daily life. And so, Alex, what we really got to do is in the states, we've got to help our federal governing partner focus very specifically, focus on doing those things that only it can do and do exceptionally well, like world peace and a sound monetary system. Focus on doing only those things that only it can do well, and leave local zoning and planning and the tending of the garden to those people that know the soil, know the climate, know the culture, know the geography, know the geology, and are right there to deal with the circumstances, whose lives and livelihoods depend upon that land, like Canada discovered.
Now, obviously, the media set things up where discrimination is only white against black or black against white or north against south. That's how they want us thinking. But isn't the ultimate discrimination the fact that special interest and socialists in D.C. and others don't want the West and the states to have the same freedoms as the East has? I mean, how can you have maybe 5–10% of the land in the East being federal and upwards of 90% in states like Nevada? How can Congress and how can the feds say no to the law you've passed? So maybe spend some time on that, please, sir, as the state rep that helped get this passed and authored. And then walk us through the procedure now, because we know there's going to be special interest that are going to try to stop this.
That's a great point, Alex. What I want to point out first is this is not a partisan effort. Republicans and Democrats voted for the bill. Republicans and Democrats on the committees and the commissions. In fact, in Nevada, bipartisan commission unanimously approved moving forward on the transition for the transfer of public lands. Critical effort, because educating our kids is not a partisan issue. Burning up our animals and our watershed is not a partisan issue. Having jobs and having a roof over our head and caring for our lands is not a partisan issue. So we've got some counties all over the West that have less than 5% taxable land. How do you take care of kids and roads and public safety when you've only got 5% taxable land? So in terms of moving forward, there are states all over the West now that are starting to take legislative action on this very same thing. You've got Arizona is taking action. Nevada's already taken action, working more. Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, Alaska's now getting in the game on this. South Carolina, Alex, did a resolution supporting the transfer of public lands. And so for your listeners that are in states east of Colorado, if you go to the resources and then what's happening in my state, and you click on the eastern states, you've got a packet where you can get your legislators to run a resolution in eastern states to support this. Now, back to your point on discrimination. United States Supreme Court, just a year and a half ago, in a case called Shelby County versus Holder, said the constitutional equality of the states is essential to the harmonious operation of the republic. They said our nation was and is a union of states, equal in dignity, power, and authority. Well, think about these football games we just saw this last weekend, right? Aaron Rodgers, I mean, what an incredible guy. I mean, I know you're probably a Dallas fan. Dallas got ripped off on that call at the end. Aaron Rodgers is running off of one leg, and he's still doing amazing things. But imagine if you're fielding a football team, and you've got to field a couple of guys that just are not 100%. In fact, they're 30, 20%. Well, if you're the opposing team, you're going to exploit that all day long. Well, that's what's happening in our government right now. You've got part of your team where the states and the federal government are supposed to have healthy tension. They're supposed to be opposing one another to provide that healthy tension that keeps our system in balance. Well, if you've got a whole bunch of your team that are at extreme disability, where they only control 10, 15, 20, 30% of their land, you're going to exploit that all day long, and that's what's happening in government. Give you a perfect example. A year ago, there's something called PILT. All of you in the East are paying money, your tax dollars, to subsidize the West. It's called payment in lieu of taxes. It's payment in lieu of the taxes we would otherwise collect if the federal government kept the original promise to transfer the lands. So payment in lieu of taxes, federal government in 1976 said, hey, don't worry, this is going to be permanent, going to be mandatory. It's just as good as sovereignty. You can trust us. Well, over the last 6 years, the federal government hasn't even had a budget. And so not only is the PILT not permanent, mandatory, it's not even in the budget because they don't have it. A year ago, they didn't even put it in the continuing resolution. And these counties are now dependent upon this money that's only 13 cents on the dollar of the taxable value of their land in many cases. So they're dependent on this for public safety, education, roads, transportation.
It makes you creatures of the federal government, and it's almost like the federal government has conquered the West by never letting it be truly sovereign. And I'm a Texan. I love Texas. But Texas advertises to businesses, hey, come here. We've got more open land. We've got lower taxes. So it's basically like we're a NFL, Green Bay team playing a college team when we compete against the West. I mean, you don't want Utah to go under. It's a great, beautiful state, a lot of hard work and smart people. But it's almost the analogy of Texas versus California. Look at how California is falling apart because they can't compete with Texas. Now, that's because of their socialist policies. And I understand you're saying it's not partisan. And I understand there's a lot of Democrats that want to have free, open societies and prosperity. But it is the environmental, socialist, anti-human control freaks that don't think humans should be anywhere out west. And there's the feds denying more and more access to the public lands they control. Isn't that driving the anger out west at being treated like serfs?
Oh, indeed, right? Indeed. I mean, when you can't control your own land, your own water, your own resources. I'll give you an example. Okay, I got a county commissioner down in Sevier County, Commissioner Gordon Topham. A couple months ago, we're talking to him, and he says, look, my forest, a healthy forest, has 40 trees to an acre. Right now, my forest has 800 trees to an acre right now. There's so many trees, they're competing for the same resource. They're dying, they're dead all throughout the forest. This is the same all around the West. He says, I'm one spark away from losing my watershed in the second most arid state in the nation, and my community dies. And my federal partner is telling me that they're going to prevent me from protecting my community to have a viable source of water, protecting the air from being polluted, my animals from being burned up, my watershed from being destroyed. That's how serious this is. And again, that's not a partisan issue. Now, yes, there are these eco-obstructionist groups that they'll go out and all day long, they'll put out press releases and say the federal government's mismanaging the land, so we're going to sue them and extract taxpayer dollars if we win on a technicality. And they simply don't want that gravy train to end. But the states are stepping up because this is purely a matter of the health, safety, welfare of our communities. And the United States Supreme Court, Alex, 2 years ago said that jurisdiction over health, safety, welfare is possessed by the states and not the federal government. They said the independent power of the states serves as a check on the arbitrary power of the federal government. And then they said this, Alex. They said states are separate and independent sovereigns. Sometimes they have to act like it.
That's right, and it's time to bring balance back to the situation. AmericanLandsCouncil.org